There we go.
Here we are.
Okay, today it's going to be an interview with Robert Nehemiah, former student at Rio Hondo and graduate from Cal State Long Beach with a BFA
BFA in drawing and painting.
in drawing and painting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you see your years at Rio Hondo? What were you learning when you went to school there?
First off, I think it's important to say that I didn't even start the school going for art. I mean, I was studying fire tech initially.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest, it was one of your classes that really pulled me back into art. So it was an
Cool.
awesome experience. But once I got into the program with the art and drawing and stuff, I think a lot of the instructors actually had a lot of passion, and that drove me.
Yeah. Yeah.
With exception, I think that's fair to say. But for the most part, I mean, it was a phenomenal experience to be able to learn what I did from Rio, especially as a foundation for what I moved into.
Yeah. That's a really good point because that's what we teach there is foundational things so that you can take those and run with it in whatever direction you want. I mean, a lot of people go into animation, a lot of people go into graphic arts, computer graphics, all of that stuff. But drawing and painting isn't as like that used to be the steadfast degree, right? Drawing and painting. That was a focus for everybody. But now it's so diverse. It's spread out considerably, and there's more work for people within several different industries, and so I think that's really good. Now, what happened at Long Beach after you got there?
Again, for speaking on a student's term, I think it's fair to say I first got a letter of rejection.
Uh-huh.
I think it's something. If you get that, it's okay. But I did immediately receive a letter of acceptance because I think it's fair to share with students. You have to keep in mind that when people get accepted, they don't necessarily accept the exception or the acceptance themselves. So that opens up slots for other people to get pulled into the programs.
Right.
But yeah, initially in Long Beach, we jumped into like the core classes, or like the pre-foundation again, like touch up on what we've learned at Rio Hondo, for example. And then you get to specialize. So you start looking into what you want to focus on and start getting more direction and input on the things that you look for and want to do. So
yeah, I think that's why the fundamentals are so important at that
Absolutely.
incoming level, because then you have tools, and they take those tools and you say, now what do you want to do? And they make you start focusing your brain. Like, to me, in community college, you need to be open. You need to take in all of that stuff: psychology, anthropology, all of those ologies, studies.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so you get a foundation across a broad range of things, and that helps you build on a life. That a little bit about this, a little bit about that, and you can always expand upon that.
Sure.
But gee, the university just takes those and really squeezes you down and makes you focus.
Yeah, and even makes you question, shit, do I want to do this, or do I want to do that, or do I even like this?
Yeah.
That's something I appreciate that you taught, was more of the thinking for yourself aspect. If you're going to make that decision, there's a consequence. If you're going to make that decision, there's a consequence. And do you want that consequence?
Yeah.
So that's a really cool aspect that I picked up from there, and I appreciate that.
So what kind of things would you like to show people about how your career is going and where you came from?
Sure. To start, again, my focus was figurative drawing and painting. So more of the portraiture aspect. Compositionally, I played with some compositions here and there, actual compositions, like built out compositions with thought beforehand. But I ended up leaning towards, I guess, more professional portraiture. So the aspect of somebody there and capturing a moment with somebody there. So using that myself, I picked up a lot of jobs painting memorial pieces for individuals. And again, this is, I think it's fair to split it in half, whereas I had commissions and I had my own personal works.
Right.
And so they reflected one another really well, but the commissions were more like pocket cash to survive, and personal pieces were more exploring kind of my own philosophies and my own interests in figurative painting or portraiture painting. So let's see if I have something here just to show the difference, real quick, to share the difference. I'll start off with the commission aspects. So one of the commissions that I've done, for example, is like this father-son memorial piece that I did for a friend of mine. Is that up on your screen, Ron?
Yes, it is.
Alrighty. So again, using what I learned, I was able to just capture and actually reconstruct. So this was taken from a photo of a father and son. The father had passed away, but the photo was different. It was just them two, and he was off, the son was off further to the right, holding his niece. So I was able to go in, again, being someone who touched in animation, I kind of played with Photoshop quite a bit. So I was able to use Photoshop to my advantage, play with the composition that made sense, and make it come to life in a painting.
Right.
And so, yeah, so this is, again, touching on more of the commission-based work that I've been doing, again, very much influenced by my own personal works as well.
Right.
But to share from this to my own personal works would be something like one of my favorite pieces is the painting of my grandmother. You know which one?
Yes, I love that painting.
Artboard. So it's more of a focus on an individual. I figure out the composition and the setup myself. I built photo references, so I collect photo references for the piece itself, and then I'll go in and find material that I find useful in a particular piece, where I've used all sorts of materials from cardboard to wood to metal. Again, very much influenced by you, Ron. So I, again, appreciate the things that you've taught me along the way. But you can see in this piece, it was like playing with the textures and the materials of the cardboard to my advantage, to be able to use it and utilize it for the piece itself, the whole piece. So
it's what I love about this painting so much, how the materials speak throughout this painting is that they're really common everyday materials. They're the kind of thing you see laying in the street or whatever, even though this cardboard used to be a box that delivered something that was important to somebody that had stuff in it.
Yeah, and you can see the
tape history.
Just the tape and the marks of the history of what it was.
Yeah.
Being able to use that to my advantage and keep a lot of it, not necessarily like you would a blank canvas, get rid of all the white surface or anything like that. You use something that already has a full history, and you take it.
That photograph of her looks so regal. I mean, it has a character all of its own of royalty.
Sure. And that's the great part about being the artist, right? Is being able to decide those things.
It's gorgeous, and the way that the direction of the corrugation of the cardboard is running adds to the shawl. Mm-hmm. Especially that part above the hand where the collarbone would be on the hand side of this picture. That darkness that runs right there really makes that cardboard turn, and it's just a beautiful piece.
Things like this piece, this was a piece I did quite a while back. I think if you're really into art and creating, and you have an eye for it, some things come naturally. Like things that I notice now about this piece is, like you mentioned, the direction of that cardboard, even the split in the line registers the same direction as the light. Something like that is, I think, if you really, really get into it, even early on, something you can plan out. And the more you plan out, the better something can be. You can overplan for sure. You can screw something up by overplanning. But like, this is the beauty of this one, is I just noticed that like that cardboard direction is actually registering the same direction as the light. But I think a lot of those intuitive decisions just kind of come when you're playing and exploring with art,
Yes.
which is awesome. It's amazing. And
Sometimes that's the most fun of it, is just coming upon something that you didn't expect,
sure.
and seeing how it's working and then playing with that.
Yeah, so this is a piece I actually go back to a lot to see, because to me, this is one of my most successful pieces. But to go back and start figuring out, why is it successful? What
Yeah,
is it that works? And then breaking it down and being able to kind of retouch on those aspects in another piece, or even break those aspects in another piece. It's all questioning your own work and other people's works, and trying to just figure out, again, honing in on what you want to do. I knew at
yeah,
this point that I wanted to work on found material. I knew at this point that I wanted to work with portraiture, and I'm like, screw it, let's do it together. And I started coming out with these interesting compositional pieces on found
very
material,
nice.
which I really like.
I
Um,
love the simplicity of what you've done with the chair back there, just a fade from the top to the crest of the chair,
sure.
which is really warm there behind her head.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I wish it was a higher
and then
res
the
photo. I don't have a
spray
higher.
of that caning, uh, to just, how did you do that? Just the, like the caning marks behind her on the chair. That's that material, that the
That's the material
crisscross.
that came. Yeah,
Yeah, that's called caning.
yeah.
And did you just hit those as dots, or did you spray through a textured thing, or how did you
Um,
make those?
I mean, I initially drew them out, and I kind of played with them a little more gesturally, a little quicker with Mark.
Huh?
But yeah, I drew them out and painted them in. That was probably uh,
Excellent.
one of the more comparable to one of your classes with the whole gridding aspect, right? If you grid something out and lay it in, as long as you follow the direction and follow what you have on like your initial marks and your initial drawing, and you go in and again, like paint by numbers. Once those are drawn in, as long as I painted them, they kind of register the way that they should.
That pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I love the corner of the chair right there too, that delicate rendering of that. Like, zoom in on that again. And just right at the corner where the crest comes this way and then it comes down.
yeah, where that
Well,
highlights it.
yeah, that's just so sensitive painted, just that corner. And it pulls that whole chair into reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Really
think, again, using the contrast between something as rugged as the what she's wearing with the cardboard ripped, and something like a fine mark, like a highlight, that contrast worked out again in my favor, and I was fortunate for this piece to
yeah.
come out the way it did.
I like it. It's a beautiful portrait, and the materials that you chose reflect the 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 commonness of the people, right? But your grandmother is elevated within that,
Sure.
like she's just that kind of a person. She comes from common things, but her
Yeah,
personality is lifted way above.
absolutely. And again, that's a something you can do, or work in direction of, or work against, based on the choices you make in lighting and color and composition and surface and all these things, which is a great exploration, to be able to go in and figure out what you want to do as an artist and how you want to portray that.
Nice. So as a portrait painter, do you see yourselves, for your own personal work, doing more things like this, working on common materials and
Absolutely, that's
uh,
something I'm really fond of, and something I want to continue working on. Right now, I'm in the in between with commission work and trying to make ends meet and this and that. But once the next week, or about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks from now, I should have most of that out of the way, and should be able to get into collecting some new photos for some new pieces that I want to work on. And
so
again,
what kind of a commission are you working on now? Portrait?
the one I'm working on right now is the husband wife portrait, the large scale one, for a client. They had passed away some years back, but yeah, I can show you that one. If
Sure.
Let me get this off of here real quick. I should have enough battery. I'm not gonna show it for too long because I'm gonna unplug from the power source here. If I could share this real quick.
Well, your studio space is really nice.
I love my studio. I got fortunate with this one. let's see, switch camera. So let's go, we can go this way. Let's go this way, see more of it. So this piece is what I'm working on right now, just to show a quick up and down of this, and I'll go in on it right now.
Nice composition. Love the rail leading in right
Oh
there.
yeah, it's a straight Boyle Heights rail for anybody
Nice.
who knows
The stairs too.
So
Just
I'm
the
still getting, I'm
texture
still
of it.
working into this, putting a couple more hours into this, but you can kind of see where it's at and which way it's going.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm currently working on. Is again, for scale, it's fairly large piece. It's
right. Almost life size.
yeah, getting up there compared to my smaller pieces for sure. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now.
Really nice.
And that one, and I actually have a couple other ones to do. Hold on, let me get you plugged back in before this thing dies on me. Should be back. There we are.
Okay. Do you have any of your old pieces from Rio?
Do I
you've
have
done?
any? I have actually
have any
a lot
book?
of gesture works, a lot of studies.
Life drawing studies?
Yeah, like more of the gestural studies. I don't think I have any on here. Let me see real quick. Gestural studies. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I mean, once, I mean, it was Ada. I don't know if anybody does the whole portfolio thing now with the life drawing, how they would save it in the portfolio and then save it
I think James or Sergio Revia might be teaching life drawing right now.
Okay.
And both of them are from Laguna. So it's very fundamental, very classical
Sure.
oriented in terms of its portraiture and composition, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know how they teach it, but the way that I was learning it from Rio was with earlier sessions in a single class session. You'd have your breakdowns of your gestures into your longer studies, into your longest study. That was so beneficial to me personally, because something about portraiture is when portraiture and any kind of technical drawing or painting is when you get in there, it becomes very technical. It's like trying to figure things out in a technical manner. When you're doing gesture drawings, it's more of a sensation. It's more of a feeling where you're moving with the movement of the body. And to be able to figure out that those two are different, but can be used one and the same was really important for my work. There's a lot of people who paint portraiture, paint more traditional aspects of painting, more traditional works, and they don't necessarily practice gesture, and they don't necessarily have these more loose practices, and their work becomes very stiff. So even if I'm not introducing or using gesture in the beginning of my drawing to that degree, or the beginning of my painting to that degree, I still practice it, and I think it's really important to be able to practice that. To have that balance. I think balance is the key word with anything.
Yeah, I think when I sit down to do a portrait of somebody, I get a little stiff.
Sure.
And I have to loosen up along the way. But
sure. I mean, that
stiff and it comes out that way. It's like
it's a bodily, mental
right
thing.
Here goes all the way down through your nervous system, into your arm and into your hand and right into your fingers. So if you're feeling all, it shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full body thing. And again, to be able to just break that momentarily, to do a gesture drawing before a long painting, or to do something more interactive. I don't know if interactive is the word, but loose for sure. Something a lot more. Even if that's doodling on a piece of paper, even if that's just playing around with mark making.
Yeah.
It helps you go into it with a different mentality versus, I'm about to sit here for a long period of time and just paint and be very, and again, the body tenses up and it's a whole different aspect of creating.
Yeah.
So I think for any individuals who do go the direction of more traditional works, drawing and painting, like portraiture or anything like that, to be able to find a practice that breaks that norm, for yourself,
Yeah.
holistically. Um, but yeah, I can share a couple more of my works on the found
Okay,
material.
please.
Um, let's see. One of my most recent ones, actually, let's go through. I want to share yours because this is a portrait people might recognize.
I like that piece.
Yeah, I do. I like this one too. I wish I didn't have anything for scale, but these are about, all of them are about about 3.5 feet by some tall. So they're not massive, but they are larger than smaller little 2 foot by 1 foot, 12 inch
Yeah,
by.
that's a large piece. It's like 3.5 feet square.
Yeah.
Plus
So
or minus.
this was a part of the same series from the last one. I had four, technically 5 pieces, but four that I really consider part of this body of work. And this was on another found piece of wood that I came across. And that's something too, is you don't, again, the idea of going to an art store and buying canvas, that's all great. And it's beneficial to some degree in certain works, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I found it very beneficial to find stuff because, first off, I wasn't spending money on materials that I didn't have to spend on. And again, the surfaces themselves had a whole history. So it wasn't like
Right.
working on a blank canvas and starting from scratch and being scared to mark the canvas and all these things. It was a lot more freeing. So in itself, it was almost that practice of like gesture drawing in a different degree. Because interesting enough, for these pieces, I actually had to go scavenging, right? I had to go out and find what materials worked for me. There's no, I mean, I'm sure you can find somewhere that has these worn down rustic pieces, but I was going through the tracks, I was going through industrial parts of the city, digging through dumpsters, and it was a whole adventure in itself, trying to find the materials for each piece,
Yeah.
um, which really drives them. It's not, again, just going to an art store and having a project you have to do and feeling like stuck to this. I got to get out there and explore. And again, these were actually for some of my undergraduate work. So it was in school that I was doing these pieces. Still, it wasn't I wasn't painting on white canvas. And
Yeah.
again, university allows for you to start exploring these things, and community college does as well. But you have to be willing to think out of the box to some degree and not just try to get an A, right?
Right.
It's a risk you take, and more than less, I'll definitely say it's worth it in the end.
Oh, I one time I met the artist Betty Saar. You know who Betty Saar is? She's
I
a tremendous
don't.
assemblage artist. Anyway, I met her at LACMA, and we were talking, and I was telling her that I like to do assemblage work as well. And so I used to be able to walk down the alley and just find my stuff and collect it, and take it back to my house. I said, now in the middle of the night, the metal fairies come and take all of the
Yeah.
metal in the alleys, and all of the stuff, it's gone. And she poked my arm and she goes, honey, we're hunters and gatherers. And it just cracked me up. That
I
was
mean,
the
it's
perfect way
absolutely
of
true
seeing it.
for certain aspects of art and certain aspects of creating.
Yeah,
So that's something I find in itself very satisfying and very rewarding.
absolutely.
So if any individuals feel like they want to explore with anything like that, I'd say do it. Don't wait for permission. Don't, if they're maybe not for Ron's pieces that he's requiring certain things, but in your own work or further into studies of art, just do it. I think it's
Once you
you.
get past those fundamental classes, you start to be allowed to explore more. Like once you get into the second and third semesters in painting, and those, I mean, my classes are basic foundational beginning classes, but gee, there's so much room to explore and to try new things, and I really encourage that.
And again, to show the opposite end of that, you have to remember that, especially the painting that I was taught traditional academic painting, but from a traditional Chinese artist, a traditional Chinese practicing artist, who was taught very, very thoroughly academically, and it was just very, very, what's the word?
Dry.
Yeah, not, yeah, sure. It was very, it was like heavy in discipline, you know?
Yes.
And so actually for this body of work, me and my friend had a gallery show that we were signing up for to have our own gallery display at Long Beach. And for that, you have to get an instructor's approval. So I actually approached one of my instructors, actually him, the main instructor I had for the academic painting, with this body of work that we wanted to present, and he actually denied us the show.
Wow.
And you have to remember that just because someone doesn't approve of what you're doing, or it's not necessarily in that person's direction, that it doesn't mean it's good, or it doesn't mean it's bad, your work. It just means that an individual may be opposed or this or that, and how it reflects them. And I get it. There's politics behind everything. But what we did was we approached a new instructor at the show, and we showed him the works, and he was very fond of what we had in mind, and he signed off on it. We had the show, and it was actually one of the best shows at Long Beach in the time. It was a great show. We had two bodies of work, both figurative painters, myself and another individual. He was actually going out and meeting. So he grew up in like the South Central area, South Central LA. If people know the area, it's been a rough area, but he grew up out there, and he would go out and introduce himself or meet homeless individuals, and he would get to know them some, and then he would ask for their permission to create a work about them. So he had these his pieces were massive. They were like at least 7 feet minimum in one direction.
And homeless people.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And so it was actually my work and his work complementing each other, because I was working on found material, and he was working on found individuals in the same aspect. And it was a really cool show. And what we wrote about the show was this whole idea of how people may overlook materials, and people may overlook people, right? All these things that are surrounding us, and how it can go unnoticed. And so it was a really, really great show. And again, we were denied that show. So just because you're getting denied something, or someone doesn't like something, doesn't necessarily mean your work isn't worth it. It's just, you have to remember that there's unfortunately politics and everything. But that actually pushed me to actually want to do it even more. You know what I mean? And that happens.
Cool. But what else do you have? You got the time here, so go ahead and show whatever you would like, Robert. I'm really loving seeing your work.
Sure. I'm gonna run through again the series really quick. So that one, you saw the two. One was Ron, the portrait of Ron. One was my grandmother. This was my mother's portrait. I should just set them up in the slide, but so this was on a found piece of rusted metal that I came across.
Wow.
So that's my mom's portrait.
Hard and soft.
Yeah, definitely.
I love the way that the rust colors come out in her arm. You know, that connection between there and moms. I kind of like that. They're soft and loving and hard, and you know, they gotta be. It's their job.
And that's the thing that I really find interesting about working on found material is you may have things in mind for the work, and once you finish the work, again, you'll notice things that maybe you connect or other people connect, and it creates a dialogue on its own, and it's really interesting to see that happen. And again, in doing that, hearing the critique or feedback from individuals, oh, it's this material reminds me of this or this, can either make you realize, okay, that's what I meant, or that works with me, or that's not what I meant, and how can I fix that next time?
Yeah.
And it's really,
Like right now in my classes, my students are just learning how to talk in critiques, and everybody has that fear from adolescence on of I don't want to talk, I don't want to say anything. Oh God,
Sure,
yes, and
sure.
what if I say something wrong? And it, and I tell them, I want to know, do you like this? Do you not like it? That's a subjective approach,
Yeah,
I like it or I don't like it. And then the objective part is why? Why do you
absolutely.
like it?
Something interesting with me is I don't remember when it was, but at one point in, I think, post high school or right at the end of high school, I was hit with a really heavy social anxiety. Um, and I don't know what, I think it was like reading in front of the class or something where the instructor just picked me and I had to read in front of the class. In my heart, like I used to be able to do this before, but from one moment on, I found myself struggling with being able to talk in front of people and being able to share ideas and it was something I had to work through for sure. And I still
Yeah.
get, when someone puts me on a pedestal or like a in front of the classroom to speak, present or anything like that, I go into a little lockdown mode. But again, it's just figuring out how to deal with that. I found my own meditations that work for me and stuff like that. But it does come with the art. You do have to be able to uh, you have to be able to express yourself, not just in your work, but to be able to talk about it, because some people are going to ask you things. And if you do push further into the art world for yourself, you're gonna have Q&As sometimes, you're gonna be talking to classes sometimes. And it's a beautiful thing. Just being able to do it, I think is a necessary part of the art world and being an artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm gonna just set the next two up real quick because I didn't do that
Okay.
previously. That's one in the series, two, three. We'll do Chris's, and then this one here, and then some of the commission pieces after that. Do, 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 do. Screw it, we'll do those two. Some random commission pieces there, and these two. So starting with, again, one of my friend's portraits for the same series, exploring that found material in a portrait.
Really nice.
Yeah, this was a crate that I found. It literally has, you can't see it fully in the photo there, but on the right there you can see the
Oh, right, the
the
markings on
number,
the
yeah, the
crate.
marking from the crate. Um, so this was again one of the pieces from the series, similar in size. I kept them all pretty similar in size. This was probably one of the more loose pieces of the whole series. Um, but again, it worked for me, and I called it when I called it, and it worked out with the body of work.
Nice. I like it. I love the little stubbles on the chin and everything that's just so simply touched
Sure,
in,
sure.
catching those highlights.
Yeah, I actually do want to go in, and these are pieces that I actually haven't varnished yet. So really finding out if they're 100% where they're at, and then varnishing them would again bring in the uniformity of color. Um,
Mhm.
which again is a long process. I generally wait about 6 months, which has been years. But after a piece is done, depending on how thick the paint is, to apply varnish, because all these again
Yeah.
are not, but all these are oil painting on found surfaces. Um, so
Oil
this,
paint, sometimes those little fat pieces can stay wet underneath that for so long. And if you varnish it, it'll craze at that point because the underneath is still shrinking, it's still moving. And so
sure,
if it has a hard varnish on there, it's just going to cause it to craze.
yeah,
So it's a technical issue. I mean, even though you're working on found materials and things, there are technical issues that you have to deal with.
sure,
Um, and that's a huge part of the work. And we have similar things that we're interested in because I'm in my assemblage work, I'm very much interested in objects that used to have a function and no longer have a function, and how that relates to how old people are treated in this country. Um, your function is done, you're out of here, and you
yeah,
just cast to the side.
yeah. It's a strange thing, but yeah, it's a great a great discussion that you're having with your work. And again, for any individual who's seeking out to paint or to create or sculpt or to do any kind of artistic work, it's really finding out what you want to express and how you want to express it.
Yeah.
There's funky work out there that I may not like, but it doesn't mean the artist didn't have intention. They didn't create for their own purpose, and you have to keep that in mind too. You can go to some galleries really quick. I mean, I've been to galleries where I didn't appreciate certain works, and then I read a little note on the work and why it was created, and it was like, holy crap, like I didn't get it, and that really works. And again, not being able, I think it's important to not treat art as one thing, right?
Oh yeah.
People look at it as one thing: paintings and sculptures and assemblage and performance art and all these things. You can't compare them to each other, right? It's very art is, as we know, is subjective, but being able to look at an art for what it is, stand alone, I think is really important with context, with some kind of context. So yeah, I think it's fair to keep that in mind.
Sure. I mean, it's when I go to museums and stuff like that, when I hear people talking that they're uninformed, they're just common people, you know, but they look at Kandinsky and said, "Oh, my kid could have done that." And you know, the fact is that they didn't, for one thing, and it's the ideas, it's a whole bunch of other stuff behind there. But you should be able to just enjoy things by how they look. If you like it, if you don't like it.
I mean, yeah, the idea that that life shouldn't be taken so seriously, I think it's really important, especially when it comes to art. We get so caught up, and again, the idea of gesture drawing, you loosen up a little bit, enjoy it a little bit. You can't forget to do that.
Yeah, the artist Ad Reinhardt, he was part of the abstract expressionist movement, but he was very tightly controlled and very much into subtleties of color. And he would have canvases that looked completely black, but then there's a stripe in there of a greenish black that goes to a reddish black that goes, you know, and they're really subtle. And I remember how tight his paintings were. And I heard him say one time in an interview that art is too serious to be taken seriously. You know, you gotta loosen up. And he was one of the tightest people that I could think of.
Sure.
But absolutely right. Absolutely right. This is like everything. This is conversations. Artists create work to communicate something, you know, and some people don't get it. It's the same in any conversation.
Sure.
If I sit down with brain surgeons, well, for one thing, they're not going to find much to work with. But, you know, I'm not going to understand what they're talking about.
Sure.
Because they slip into their own language form and everything else. You know, doctors talking to doctors is full of doctor talk, you know, a myocardial infarction and all of that stuff. It's a heart attack.
Yeah. And again, I think you mentioned, you brought up the idea of the common individual seeing your work. You have to, I think it's fair to keep in mind that a lot of people who will see your work will be a common individual at some point. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
And to keep that in mind, whether you want to use that to your benefit or not, I mean, these are decisions you get to make along the way. Do I want to make this feel more relatable to that individual? Do I not care about what they think? Is this for a certain group of people? I think those are all fair things to keep in mind when you're making your work. So let's go through
identifying your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's another piece, the more refined piece in my more current work on found material. So this is again a found palette that I came across, and I worked a portrait on here.
Nice pine.
Say again?
It's nice pine.
Yeah, it is. I love the grain that came through. And I use this piece, and I did add a layer of linseed oil to bump up the contrast in that wood in the background beforehand. and to create a little bit of a ground for the paint too.
Sure. That
That
when you do that, when you oil wood like that, it sinks into the wood and it becomes part of the wood. It's not sitting on the surface alone. It's emulsified into that wood. So it gives a really good binder to paint on, particularly when you're painting in oils.
Yeah. And in these pieces, again, you'll see a lot of blue marks throughout, and that's something that I was leaving through from the initial drawings in here. So if you go into the forehead area and the hairline, you'll see the blue under the nose.
Oh yeah, right at
a little
the top
blue.
of her hair as well.
Yeah, under the nose, you'll see that little mark too. And
Yeah.
I really liked the contrast of using this. I'll go back between colors of my drawing, because what happens in my process, it's again, I think more of the academic process of painting or drawing, is I'll draw or I'll lay out my structure, then I'll start painting into it with an underpainting. Then I'll go back and redraw the structure, and then I'll paint into it again, and I'll redraw the structure, and I'll paint into it again. And there's little places where I like certain marks coming through, so I'll go ahead and leave them, even throughout the area of the hair there into the buttons, and you'll see that blue going through. And I chose blue.
That's from the underpainting?
Yeah. So I'll let those come through from the underpainting, or at least one of the previous layers of the underpainting when I restructure. In the fingers as well, where the ring is, you'll see some of the blue marks. And it's just a personal preference. I do this on a lot of my pieces, depending on what, I mean, I do choose different colors to do that drawing, that redrawing with, and that does influence the piece. But I try to be conscious of those decisions for sure. And in this way, the blue-orange contrast, right, the complement functioned for the work. So
I love the gaze off to the side too in this portrait, because it's not confrontational. It's not confronting the viewer because the eyes are off to the side. She's in her own space. She seems very caught up in thought. And that's different. When you have a portrait where the eyes are looking right at the viewer, that's like when someone is looking you directly in the eye.
Sure. It feels almost confrontational at times. It feels very, very direct, piercing, which again, those choices in a painting or a drawing should be thought throughout the piece. This is what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. So yeah, there's this piece. And then again, I'm going to jump into some random commissions real quick just to scroll through.
Okay.
So dogs, people in commissions, they really like their pets, and it's worked for me. I've done quite a few pieces with the pet portraits. And again, even in this one, you'll see the blue coming through from the underpainting, up in the ear and on top of the nose there.
They're in the neck as well.
Yeah, you'll definitely see some of those blues coming through.
Yeah.
The blue mark right there. And I liked it. And again, it worked with the palette. It very much worked with the orange blue complement. So, and especially because I laid in a very light blue in the background.
Yeah. So those things of colored complements and stuff like that working within a thing are still important. It's color things that work, color harmonies that are traditional. Yeah,
and definitely things you carry with you. Learning just the basics, complementary colors, secondary colors, primary colors, all this language too, and how to work with the language to create a conversation. Of course, even like in a commission piece, it's not like someone sitting there and being like, this piece makes me feel happy. Or I'm sure the viewer will, the owner of the piece will feel that, but no one's standing in front of it in the gallery being, I think the artist was going for this, or I think it's not that kind of work. And even you look, it's funny because you actually see people doing this in like early academic pieces in museums. And sure, there were things that the artist did for reasons, but you have to remember a lot of historical pieces were commissioned pieces. They were painted because somebody wanted that painted. And we have to, I think it's important to separate historically the difference of art, commissioned art, and today's art for art's sake, right? Creating art, creating art. So it's a whole different aspect of art, and it's very new to us. so I think it's beneficial for us to have that, but I think it's important to also collect the information historically. Why were people making quote unquote art earlier on, and why are we making it now?
And why is Goya's his commission pieces look one way and his private pieces he was during the Inquisition look
Sure.
way different?
Sure. I mean, essentially, I'm doing a little bit more closely related pieces from my own personal work to my commission work. But you have to remember, as an artist, you have to survive. So you do you get creative. You get creative with what you do, how you do it. And in the art world, what I really like about the art world is it's flexible as long as you're able or willing to make the flex, make it happen for yourself. You have to be able to just kind of squeeze through little pathways and make connections, and
you have to learn how to slide left or right depending
sure.
on what the customer wants.
Or I mean, to be fair, like I do logos and I do digital stuff and I do digital drawings and caricatures and I do all sorts of little things here and there. And it's the ability to be able to be diverse to allow me to have time and create what I do when I do it. You have to just be able to, if you want to be this kind of artist, if you want to be able to express yourself in your work and paint for yourself, not paint by colors, but get into your work and figure out yourself philosophically and emotionally. And I think it's important to be able to be flexible with how you make a living. I mean, you can have a regular job. You can have a regular, quote unquote, regular job and work a 9 to 5. But you also have to remember that these are going to influence your decisions. These are going to influence your comfortability, your ability and time. And if you're a very strict individual and you're able to put time aside, do it. I, for one, struggle with, like, I could never do I work at Home Depot some hours of the week. Like, I chose to do that. But I never ever offered them my full time because I need time to create, and that putting full time there just drained me. It would drain me and I wouldn't be able to paint for myself. I just wouldn't have it in me.
Sucks the energy out of you.
Absolutely. So keeping that in mind, if I can work on a digital piece, I think, or some kind of art related piece, I think it keeps me in the loop of my creativity to be able to have energy to do something else with myself creatively.
Yeah.
So.
You have any other pieces set up there? No, that's nice.
That's a watercolor piece.
Beautiful job on the screen of just creating that random pattern like that. God, that's really nicely done.
Yeah, I was gonna go in with a pen and I didn't. Fortunately, I didn't do that. I came in with a really thin brush and just pulled these little quick marks.
Yeah.
But it worked. It worked for this piece. So again, this was a commission piece as well, watercolor commission.
Calico.
Yeah. I get all sorts of little commissions in painting and again, these are just pet portraits, but
very cool though.
And again, you'll see that mark coming through again.
Yeah.
Maybe not as intense in this one, but it's there.
No, but it works as a highlight.
Sure.
So let me see where we are on time here. Okay, we're getting pretty close to not being able to go on much more. So.
Well, I'm just gonna scroll through these and like.
That's really nice.
So again, these are just commissions that I've done via clients that I came across, and it worked. It worked for me. But yeah, so that's what I do, and that's what I've been doing, and I've been fortunate to be able to do what I do.
Very nice. Do you have any sketch images at all of your drawing?
Let's see. Just some quick sketches. I have this was a. Let's see if I can drop the other one real quick. Do I have the other one? Not sure where I put my phone down, but I had a comparison which was fun. But these are just self-portraits. Let's see if I can show this real quick. So like a loose contrast self-portrait with the charcoal.
Oh, that's really nice.
versus like a more refined drawing with graphite.
Yeah, but look at the values that you're picking up and how critically important that is to this piece. One-sided shade, and the whites of the eyes are not white, and all, you know, it's all of that stuff that happens when we're first learning to do portraits or first learning to draw people. The whites of the eyes always end up being white, and you know, we get stuck by the word. That's a beautiful drawing, Chito. Very nice.
And just to I think this was something interesting that I came on was I found this image. So this was, I think, 2 years apart in drawing practice. So something like this, as compared to, again, the one you just saw
Uh-huh.
there. So being able to refine in practice and figure things out, it's a process. It's like learning to ride a bike and to be a badass on a bike, doing all sorts of
Tricks
tricks or
and
something.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Really
things
nice.
of that nature.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate the trip into your studio and looking at your both your private work and your commission work. Running a life as an artist is a hard thing to do. I got into doing mural work, and once again, just commission work. You know, people want you to do things and you're looking at them going, what? But you do it because that's how you're making a living.
Sure.
Um,
I think it's fair to keep in mind like how rewarding it is in itself.
yeah,
For the individuals who want that, I'm not saying everybody in this classroom should be an artist, but I think those who has that calling, you know, that you want to create even an animation or design, the field of art is very rewarding.
yeah, and there are a lot of ways to go now. The animation and all of the things for the movie industry, which
Sure.
we are prime location for all that, you know,
Sure.
because it's right here in Burbank and North Hollywood. There's so much work for artists doing scenic work, doing all kinds of different things like that, and all of the post things that go on with movies, all of the computer generated activity. There's work out there.
Yeah, and
So
again, I think it's interesting today because people can actually work. I'm at the point to where if I wanted to just do pure commission work, I can almost work solely online, right? I can collect clientele online. I could go live somewhere else. I'm glad that I live here in LA and this art haven, right? But we're very close to the point where you can go almost off grid with some kind of internet connection
sure.
and survive on your art alone. Like you really can. There's different apps that if any of the students have questions on, there's different apps out there where you can just apply for, and then there's just requests on, oh, I need this done, I need this done, I need that done, I need this done, and it's all art. It's all, whether it's architectural design or portraits or anything like that, and you can just get work that way.
There's positives and negatives about that. I have a friend who's a world-class illustrator,
Sure.
and you know, if he does a cover for Time magazine, it's a lot of money. You know, it's like, I don't know, I'm making up numbers here, but it'd be like 25 grand, you know. Sure. And but they can get somebody from Yugoslavia to rip off his style and do it for $400.
Yeah.
Boom, that's just losing your clientele, you know,
Yeah,
because of how people can bid on things now.
sure.
So,
One of the apps that I like is you can actually go by region. So there's some people who do US only or international, or and it creates these different slots for different groupings of artists, which is interesting. So
yeah,
but yeah, I do hear that aspect economically, how it can be difficult with the competition being so cheap elsewhere, because
right.
the economy is different.
But if you're sticking to fairly local things, like if you're doing your pieces and it's mostly for people in Southern California, that's
Sure.
one thing.
Sure.
You start becoming international, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. I have clients right now in Florida. I have clients in different parts of the US for my digital work, for logos and for digital art that I'm doing illustrations for different things. But when it comes to commission work, I think the farthest I've ever shipped a piece was to Midwest. Like I've shipped to the Midwest, like paintings, actual paintings.
Uh-huh.
It's I mean, I don't mind doing that. I do like working more locally. But a lot of the pieces too, people have been sending me like response videos for the memorial pieces of like them gifting it to someone and that individual responding, which has been
Oh,
beautiful
that's nice.
and
That's really
and,
nice.
and really like
Because those memorial pieces are going to cut right to the quick.
absolutely. It's like they're you can't put a number on that. You know what I mean? They're
No,
very, very rewarding in themselves. And so I've been again fortunate enough to be able to do stuff like that.
fantastic, man. Well, keep it up. When all of, when we actually get to move around and stuff in the world, I'd love to come over and see your studio. It's
Most
really
definitely.
nice.
Most definitely. It's a cool little space. And again, as an artist, I'll say this to any other artists out there, be creative with a space. I think it's really important to have a space. And whether that's the garage or the shack down the street or whatever you can work with, make use of it. Especially
Absolutely.
in today's economy, especially in today's economy.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you very much. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
You got it, Ron.
All right. Thanks, Chito.